Gastrointestinal functioning. All right, when we eat food, food basically comes in three forms here. We've got the carbohydrates, we have the lipids or the fats, and we've got the proteins. As the carbohydrates break down, they break down into monosaccharides. Saccharide, that means sugar. As the fats break down, we get fatty acids and monoglycerides. And as the proteins break down, we get amino acids. There are the macronutrients that we just talked about, the carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. There's also micronutrients, which are your vitamins and minerals. There are essential nutrients, and these are nutrients that are essential for our health that the body can't synthesize. You have to eat them. What kind of nutrient is water? While many don't consider it a nutrient, it can be considered an essential nutrient. Where does digestion take place? Mostly in the mouth and stomach. Some occurs in the small intestine, but most of the digestive process takes place in the mouth and stomach. Where does the absorption of nutrients take place? In the small intestines. And water is absorbed in the large intestines. What else is needed for digestion and absorption? We need enzymes in bile, mechanical movements, and peristalsis. The enzymes and bile are needed to break down the macronutrients into micronutrients. We're taking the meat and breaking it down into the amino acids, that kind of thing. The mechanical movements, that's the churning that takes place within the stomach and to some extent the intestines, but largely the stomach and the teeth that break down the food. Peristalsis, that's to move the food, or the chyme as we call it then, the nutrients, along the GI tract, keep it moving. And this also requires an intact nervous system. What happens if we don't have the enzymes that we need? Well, then food can't be broken down properly. It may be partially broken down, and these partially broken down components can sometimes cause damage to the body. The energy and nutrients required from the body may not be available if there aren't the proper enzymes. This is what happens in diseases such as PKU. The body can't break down the food properly. A partial breakdown product builds up, and it ends up attacking the brain. What happens if there isn't any bile? Well, life can go on. They may have some difficulty digesting fats, but not usually too much. How about if that nervous system is not intact? What if there's a problem there? Well, it depends on what type of nervous system problem there are. You're looking at, is it sympathetic or parasympathetic problems? So there may be a change in peristaltic activities, the movement of the chyme through the system. So if it either takes too long or too short to get through the system because of the nervous system problems, we may have not enough time for the nutrients to be absorbed, or too much time sitting in the gut getting through and all the fluid is absorbed, and then we end up with dry stools and dehydration. Dry stools and constipation. We might also end up with incontinence. Okay, what happens if part of the stomach is removed or banded off, such as in bariatric surgery? The person will not be able to eat as much. They're going to feel full very quickly. But they need to get the essential nutrients in nonetheless. So they eat small, frequent snacks instead of meals. And they're focusing on what the body really needs, not all the extra fun stuff. What happens if they overeat? Well, the food can't get through the stomach yet, and they're going to have problems with reflux. and potentially aspiration. Continued overeating is going to result in the remaining portion of the stomach to stretch, and you're going to get back to where you started from. The whole point is to have a small stomach so you feel full and you don't eat as much. So the success of these procedures depend on the person feeling full and not overeating. Okay, let's move into the intestines. What happens if part of the small intestine is damaged or removed? Well, remember, that's where nutrient absorption takes place, so we're going to end up with malnutrition. The more of the small intestine that's removed, the worse the malnutrition. How about the large intestine? Well, that's where a lot of the fluid is supposed to be reabsorbed. And it means there's not as much time for the water to be absorbed, and we're going to end up with watery stools. And since the water's not being reabsorbed, we also end up with dehydration. And again, the more of the large colon that's removed, the more of a problem this is.